I'm Drew.
And I'm Tony.
And this is Back for Our Future, the show that goes back to look at our past, maybe yours, and then help us inform about our future coming up. Who knows, right? On this show, we just go back and talk about stuff with the Steel Trap man, Memory Man there. But we talk about things that we grew up watching and enjoying. We tell the stories around them. We talk about a little bit of life. It's like a long-form coming-of-age podcast. And we happen to use that format to tell you great stories about some of the movies coming up. And this month is no exception. We're in the back half of August. We took a little break there to talk about quite a few people that passed away in 1 month. And so now we're into the back half of August, 1994. We'll get to that in a second. But first, Tony, how are you? How's it going?
Well, buddy, how about yourself?
I'm good. I got my Wawa coffee. We got Wawas now.
We got construction going on all around us, but I'm kind of in the quiet room, so hopefully it's...
I don't hear anything. I think it sounds pretty good. We were joking before the show started that I was telling you, I was like, man, I think a lot of these, and we're going to go over them, but a lot of these movies in today's, quote, culture, and this is not a political statement by any means, but a lot of these movies in today's culture would probably get canceled or not come out at all. But that's also what makes 1994 kind of interesting. It was a little bit edgy by a lot of standards, and in that period, there was a lot of people that were against. Back then, it was called being PC, for those that remember. And those that don't, that's what we called, what some people would say is woke today, but that doesn't really matter. Point is like some of these movies, hilarious, questionable by today's standards. We'll talk through those. But this first one is not questionable. I'm just going to go straight into it. This is like one of the most heartfelt films. I'm hoping this is the right movie. I always have second guesses right as I say this because I come in so confident, and I could be wrong.
It's about the seal.
Okay, good. It's a good, heartfelt movie. And it's not My Dinner with Andre.
Oh.
It is just the movie Andre.
Yes.
About a little girl and her seal. What I remember this. This is one of those Suncoast movies we were allowed to play inside of Suncoast when I worked there. Is it the girl from Matilda?
No, it's Tina Majorino. She's having a big year, right? Because she's got When a Man Loves a Woman. She's got Karina, and now she's got this all in the same year. And of course, Karina and Andre both going to get released within about a week or two of each other. So she's having a kind of a big few months because this is to start her career. So these first three movies all began her career, and boom, all out at the same time. So
what you're saying is her agent really loved her right about now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, she's on the scene now in a big way.
So this seems like an AD's nightmare. Let's jump into it. You've got kids and animals all working together, in a movie.
And, it's a seal, too. So it's not like you're dealing with a dog, right? Because lots of people deal with dogs and cats and things like that, but not a lot of ways in the book to how to deal with a seal on a set. So,
boy,
that's a whole different. Because then you're dealing with water as well.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. So it's three of the worst elements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're not just dealing with an animal. You're not just dealing with a kid. You're dealing with water as well. So now you got all the elements, and that is kind of a nightmare. But it is what it is, right? You take the money when you can get the money, and that's the way it goes. The movie did pretty well, though. It's like an $8 million movie, made about $17 million. It wasn't too bad.
Oh wow.
Especially for August, because August, this is kind of the month where things start to get released that are, maybe not as believed by the studio. That studio doesn't really believe in them nearly as much as some of the movies earlier in the summer.
It seems like it was one of those movies, though, that I just remember it on secondary markets. And again, that could have been because it was, I was at Suncoast, and that was one of the movies we were allowed to watch. But it seems like it probably did fairly well in the secondary markets. It seems like one of those kind of movies that would get a lot of play on the old VHS rental days.
Yeah, I'm sure. Because, the kid element as well. And yeah, I actually saw this in the Dollar Theater. So secondary market. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly thing. That's exactly what happened.
There you go. Is there anybody else in this aside from her? Does it have a pretty stellar cast lineup?
Yeah. It's got Keith Carradine and Chelsea Field. Chelsea Field was pretty decently sized at that point as well. So, But yeah, Keith Carradine's in it as well, and it's directed by George T. Miller.
There we go. Pretty straightforward. So that's August 17th. Then August 19th, two movies come out that couldn't be further apart. Maybe one of the greatest disparities we've seen in terms of releases. Both of them have a little element of controversy, not like then, but nowadays would, just simply because of the content that's within them. Both of them are excellent films, and again, as I said, I was not kidding. They're the two furthest apart we've probably seen on the show in a long time, and that is BLANKMAN, which is also then positioned against The Color of Night. I mean, the juxtaposition.
Theaters.
Yeah, and they're both. I mean, they're both good movies. I mean, BLANKMAN is what it is, and for what it was. And again, reminding everyone, this is 1994. Color of Night is one of those movies that gets released and becomes pretty legendary. I remember talking about it in film school. We talked about it certainly in regards to like impact filmmaking that was non-documentary because it has such a strong narrative to it. But let's start with BLANKMAN. Let's go with the movie starring Damon Wayans.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Damon Wayans, David Alan Grier, and Robin Givens, John Polito, and Jason Alexander from Seinfeld fame, of course. And I mean, listen, I like BLANKMAN. It didn't do well. It was a flop at the time. It was a $30 million movie. It made about $8 million, and it's one of those movies that's kind of, I wouldn't say been disowned by the Wayans family, but certainly not the one that comes up. When you talk about the great Wayans movies and projects, this is usually one that doesn't get mentioned as much. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of funny. But yeah. I mean, I saw it. At. I actually saw this one at Carmike 10, Carmike 14, I think by that point. But still, good movie. I thought it was good.
Yeah, the only reason I say it's slightly controversial is because they're I don't remember if it's been a while since I've seen it. I don't remember if they say it or not, but there's quite a few moments where it alludes to him being special needs or handicap or autistic, like things that in today's world we wouldn't put into a comedy. Although we say that, and then my wife had me watch Love on the Spectrum, and you are laughing, but you're laughing because those individuals that are in that show are so cute and it's so wholesome and heartwarming. Wholesome is the word they use. In this, there's maybe some jokes at some people's expenses. Maybe I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't want to paint anything in a real negative light that's not true. But I just remember watching it, and again, 1994. There's a lot of different words we used back then, so there's some of that language in there, and it plays out a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, he's more nerdy than anything else.
Right.
Right. That's kind of his character in this, and it's not really special needs or anything. He might come off that way a little bit in playing the character, right?
Right.
But he's more nerdy than anything else. He's just more of a. I mean, it's kind of a parody, making fun of like the superhero nerds that want to go out and think they can help save the world like a superhero, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of funny people in it, and there is a lot of good comedy in it, and there's a lot of funny gags. So it didn't do very well, but still not a bad movie by any means.
Yeah, for sure. And that's juxtaposed, of course, by, again, as I said earlier, I mean, we learned about it in film school, but then you get The Color of Night, which is a much denser movie, much heavier, great cast in that as well. What do you got on The Color of Night?
Oh, you and I saw this one together.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But Bruce Willis, of course, doing one of his roles that he's not, it's not Die Hard or one of his bigger like franchise type movies. It's got Jane March and Ruben Blades, Leslie Ann Warren, Lance Henriksen, Scott Bakula. Very good cast. And of course, it's based around him going into like this psychologist group, and they start getting picked off one by one, and they don't know who's doing it, and that whole thing. So it's like this erotic mystery thriller, and it was kind of controversial because there were a lot of sex scenes.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of sex scenes that people didn't think necessarily needed to be on film. and so it caught a lot of flack for that. This was one of those movies too that had extra scenes. There were longer cuts. All that stuff would come out later on. Um, yeah,
Is it
and
is it something that ended up with like a special edition NC-17 rating type thing?
yeah, it had a director's cut that was like almost 20 minutes longer. That was
Good
unrated
grief.
and that kind of thing. So it had a lot of extra stuff on it at some point in time, and of course, there's a lot of very adult themed stuff going on in here, right? Because not just the sex, but there's also there's suicide mentions and suicide things that happen, and abuse and all kinds of very adult themed stuff. It's definitely not you're not going to turn it on for your children this afternoon
Right.
on a nice Friday afternoon, but. Wasn't one of Bruce's bigger movies by any stretch. I mean, it was like a 40 million, did like 47, so it wasn't by any means one of his more successful films. Still pretty good. I know a lot of people didn't love it. I really did like it. I was always into the Bruce Willis movies that weren't Die Hard. Something about him making Striking Distance is one of my all-time favorite Bruce Willis movies.
Right.
And of course, The Last Boy Scout. And I always liked the offshoot movies that weren't necessarily um, his franchise films.
Well, it's also with him. It's kind of nice to have him not get in that typecast type scenario. Like we all know, if it has the letters die or the word die and hard, you know what you're going to get from a Bruce Willis movie with that. But then he's even hilarious to me in Death Becomes Her, which is
Yeah, exactly.
right. He's super zany in that. Like it shows a range of acting in that side of things. And again, it's is it something that I still remember? No, I only remember it because it came up in, like I said, it came up in some of our film school discussion stuff. It was one of the films that we looked at for, again, the amount of content because it was controversial. And that was later on. Obviously, I didn't go to film school at 15 years old.
Also, this movie caught a lot of flack. I mean, it didn't, like I said, it was up for some Golden Raspberries and things like that.
Yeah.
But Maxim, the Maxim magazine, had singled out this film as having the best sex scene in the history of film at the time.
Right.
So it was yeah. So I mean, there's that. That's not nothing.
No, I get it. And it was Maxim magazine, which should tell you, again, a reminder that we're in the 90s. I mean, there's nothing more 90s to me than a longtime listener of the show, Dale Boyd, that when he starts talking about something he read in Maxim magazine that he remembers.
Right.
Because that just tells me you're his broness of 90s. All right, so that moves us into a movie that has two components to it that we're going to get to talk about, and that is a movie that had a really popular soundtrack, and then the film was controversial. It's really interesting because we're in this, like we've talked about, the reason that this era is so important is when we start talking about stuff, you're going to start seeing that this period of time in the 90s is really making headway for a lot of like indie content to come out. Now, this is not an indie film that's coming out. It's made by a major director, but my point is it was controversial in its violence and so forth. And that is Natural Born Killers.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I was pretty excited about this movie when it was coming out. I remember as I saw the trailers and everything else, I was pretty excited about it. Oliver Stone, of course, directed it. It had a really great cast, including Woody Harrelson, your girl Juliette Lewis, Robert Downey Jr., Tommy Lee Jones, Tom Sizemore. So I was pretty excited about this film when it was coming out. I didn't see it first run. I saw it at the Dollar Theater.
Yeah.
So by this time, the Dollar Theater has a Chicago's Best Pizza running alongside of it on the other side in that little corridor area. As you walk down this little breezeway, and the Dollar Theater's on your left, and on your right is the Chicago's Best Pizza. That's there by the time this movie plays, and so I remember being very, very happy about that.
So here's my thing about this movie that I remember, and I purposely didn't do a bunch of digging on the soundtrack because I was gonna let it be a little reveal. I just remember it. My issue with this film, and I think, I don't know if your memory if you have all this, this is what I remember about it. My issue with this movie was always the fact that it was so hyped in our friend circle that I was just like, I'm not watching that crap. Like, for whatever reason, that was in my rebellious, like, if it's too hyped, I won't watch it. So I have that burned into my brain. Years go by, and I did not see it in theaters. I didn't care to see it. I had no interest in it. I remember I remember the soundtrack having some interesting, cool stuff on it, maybe. I'll let you reveal those in a second. But then when I went through and actually watched it, which was much later, I still didn't care for it. It's not one of my favorite Oliver Stone films. It's one of his better ones, but I personally still like JFK the most. But it's one of those ones where it just it felt very 90s in the sense of like shock jock. It was like a Howard Stern type thing where it's just being edgy to be edgy, and it never resonated. That said, though, the cast in this film alone, aside from, God, I hate Juliette Lewis. I just don't. I just don't like her. I just don't.
Right. That's why I said you're your girl, you know?
Oh, God. I just can't get past it, bro. I just can't. I can't get past it.
I just don't like her voice, right? That's just...
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny because she also is a singer. And that's what makes it so humorous. And she played, of course, at Louder Than Life last year.
Let me put it this way. I would rather listen to live than go see Juliette Lewis live. Do you know what I'm saying?
Rather see live perform Lightning Crashes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would take that over Juliette Lewis. Yes, I would. I really would. And I'm sure, again, I don't hate her as a human being. I just don't care for her as a performer. That's what I'm saying, folks. But it also has a really good role from Woody Harrelson, and his acting in this movie is really good. Like, this is when we get away from, gosh, I just blanked on his name on Cheers. What was his name on Cheers?
Woody.
Okay, well, that's complex, isn't it? This is where we get away from his character from Cheers, and we see him more as this zany sort of, that he has range, that we've all, like, eventually now we all understand that a lot more. But this is one of the ones where he kind of shows that wild side range. And again, Oliver Stone directed. How did this do financially? Because it was controversial, was it not?
This was a big hit for Oliver Stone. I mean, it was like a $30 million movie. It did like 110. So it did really well. I was really excited about this movie, but yeah, I didn't see it until it went to the Dollar Theater. And I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting because, you know, the slug line is the media made them superstars. So I knew there was going to be this media element to it. But when I saw the movie, it's definitely different than how I thought it was going to be. It's way different than the trailer that they kept putting out for this movie at the time. And this is around the time you start realizing that you really can't really glean much from trailers, you know, because it was different than all of that. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, it's a good movie. It's not bad by any means. It's just way different than I expected it to be. And this is around the time frame that I stopped expecting things at movie theaters. You know, like it's going to be much better if I don't go in expecting anything and just watching the movie. And I learned that pretty young age, which is good because it's made my film going a lot better, a lot happier. That I don't go in expecting things based off trailers and things like that. Because if you do that, you end up usually pretty disappointed. But,
well, but the hype on this movie, I'm not wrong, right? The hype on this movie was through the roof.
It was big, and I mean that's why it did well, even where it was released. Because traditionally speaking, a movie that's released on August 26th, because that's around you're talking about getting into like the Labor Day week, that type of that. It's usually not a very good time to release a movie at all. It's actually usually the worst. People are going back to school, and not a lot of people are going to the theater as much because you know they're all going back to school and work is going on and things like that. So, you know, there's not as many people going to the movie theater during the week, and so things don't usually drop. They don't usually studios traditionally just don't drop their movies at this time. But Warner Brothers decided to put it out, and yeah, it did really well. So this is one of those. This is one of those cases where it's the anomaly, not the norm, where a movie does really well in this time frame. Usually, every time I see a movie get released close to Labor Day, I cringe about it. I'm thinking, man, that's not going to be great. That's not going to be great.
Right. But it did have a very interesting soundtrack.
Very good soundtrack. Yeah, I mean, it was it was produced by Trent Reznor. Maybe you've heard of him. Little band called Nine Inch Nails. Um, so that was great, and it's loaded. I mean, soundtrack is just loaded. It was like a double disc at times, and it had Leonard Cohen and L7 and Dan Zanes and Patti Smith and Cowboy Junkies and Bob Dylan, Dwayne Eddy, and of course Nine Inch Nails and Patsy Cline, Peter Gabriel, and Russell Means and Dr. Dre. Your girl Juliette Lewis is on here. Uh, Lard and the Dog Pound did an original song for this as well. I mean, so the soundtrack is really just all over the place, but it's got a lot of original music that was made just for the movie, and
Right.
so you could only get it there. And then it was a soundtrack that ended up being in the top 20 on Billboard and ended up going gold. So it a lot of people enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, the editing in that movie is very different. They use music very well in that movie. It's all part. It's one of those things where like the craft of that film is really solid. I just didn't necessarily care for the narrative, is what it comes down to, frankly.
At this point,
Um,
Trent really big. Trent Reznor's huge. Nine Inch Nails is huge. So anything with them on it usually did pretty well.
right, right. And then that takes us to another one of the movies that probably wouldn't come out today, and uh, and it's in polar contrast to Natural Born Killers. It's really fascinating. This August of '94 is just they're just dumping films out. Is a skit from SNL that turns into a movie, and the name of that skit is "It's Pat." And if and here's the thing, I've met a lot of younger people who have no idea about Pat. They just have no concept of It's Pat
Yeah,
because it kind of got washed away over time.
yeah,
But back in the heyday, It's Pat had a lot of comedy driven to it because of the Pat skit was you didn't know if Pat was a boy or a girl. This is pre like trans or any of those kind of languages. So
yeah,
you could by saying that sentence, you could see how it could get canceled. But it was awkwardly funny, and it was a funny concept because of the way the characters tried to figure things. They just all were constantly trying to figure out Pat's gender. That's what they were trying to do.
yeah. So Julia Sweeney, of course, does the role of Pat in SNL and in this movie as well. And of course, it's got Dave Foley. It's got the late Charles Rocket, who notoriously got fired from SNL at one point for dropping an F bomb on air. But yeah, I mean it didn't do well at all. It was like an $8 million movie, and it got a really limited release, so it only did like $61,000 in the box office, that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it was not a huge movie by any stretch of the imagination. Listen, the over the course of time, the SNL movies have caught a lot of flack. Okay, because obviously some of them don't translate nearly as well to being a full movie than they do like a 3 or 4 minute sketch. So it is what it is. But I've always enjoyed the SNL movies, and always hear people say that they're all bad, and then I'm thinking to myself, do you not remember that Wayne's World's an SNL sketch?
Right.
Because that's a great movie, and Night at the Roxbury is amazing. Um,
Yep.
and I love Coneheads, and there's a lot of movies that are really good. I like The Ladies Man, and so there's a lot of SNL movies that are good. Um, this probably isn't the best one. I always liked the It's Pat character. I thought it was funny, and for one of our, and I don't know if you remember this, but I will put the photo of this up when we get to when this episode drops. I will put the photo of this up. It is me going to the Halloween party across the street at the Pate's house, and I am dressed as this character.
That is that is fantastic.
On the same night that my mom went as Charles Chaplin, and my dad went as a female, and my brother went as a very, very little girl. Um, it was quite
Absolutely.
quite the epic photo, and I end up winning. We all ended up winning a prize at that party, but I ended up winning best costume.
Oh, of
Uh,
course. That's
I
that's
I put
so great.
it together, and it was kind of an It's Pat meets Urkel costume because that's what I was kind of going for. But yeah, it was pretty iconic. But I did the voice and everything, and I stayed in the character the entire night, no matter what I was doing. I was never Tony that whole night. I was always Pat the entire time, and yeah, I thought it was. But you know, at that point, I got like facial hair and stuff too. But you know, pretty good.
That's hilarious. I can't wait to see that. That takes us to the seventh installment of the Police Academy series, right? Now, I'm going to be
Yes,
honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. I was not allowed to watch Police Academy 1 when it came out because it was R rated, I believe.
sure. Yep.
I'm not sure where it became PG-13, but that's where I caught up. Was that 2 maybe or 3? Whenever it became PG-13, but as the longer the police academies went on, if I'm not mistaken, the less PG-13 they became, and eventually they became PG. Is that accurate?
That's 100% true. Yes.
Yeah, which is bizarre. It's
Yeah.
really bizarre.
Well, then they started making like cartoons and things like that. If you remember, there was a Police
Oh
Academy
yeah.
car. There were Police Academy toys that were kind of more based off the cartoon, and so they became very kid friendly with these characters because you know Michael Winslow he was the great guy who made all the noises and everything else, and they had all these funny characters that people liked, and such as uh, Bobcat Goldthwait and all these other guys. They're all funny, and they wanted to make it you know make comedies that were a little bit more kid friendly at that point. So yeah, you're gonna see a really big transition in this franchise where it's gone from being a hard R to being very PG. And this is like this last of them, but didn't get any wide release in the United States at all. It did get a wide release overseas. This particular installment didn't get a wide release here in America, and which was the only one of the 7 that didn't get a wide release because 6 got a wide release and everything else got a wide release. But so it's like a $10 million movie that made like $4.5 million because it didn't get a wide release here. It got a wide release overseas. So it's definitely not the best. It's not the best of the Police Academy's Mission to Moscow, but it's got a lot of the old favorite people in it, right? So it's got George Gaines and Michael Winslow and David Graff and Leslie Easterbrook and um, G.W. Bailey. They all come back, for this installment, and then it's got some guys that you'd be shocked to see in the Police Academy movie, like Christopher Lee and Ron Perlman and Claire Forlani's in it, and people like that. So it's got a really good cast. But yeah, definitely not the more memorable Police Academy installment, of course. And as the franchise kind of wore on, when we've talked about comedic franchises, but as the franchise wore on, the more memorable ones are always like because there are some good Police Academy installments that came after one. Because you
Oh
start
yeah.
getting like Bobcat Goldthwait and people like that, and 2 and 3 and 4, a lot of those are pretty good. I even really like 6.
I
So
do listen. There's a scene in 6 that I'll never forget, which is I forget who it is. It's the blonde lady who's very well endowed upstairs. Yeah, and she's like she jumps in a pool and she's not wearing a bra, and so you get kind of a see-through shirt sequence, and she's like, "All right, who wants to save me?" And you just hear some dude Foleyed in the background go, "Oh yeah!" and he jumps in, and it's funny as. And of course, obviously, as a young dude, I was like, "Oh, look at the boobs!" Like it was like one of those things as a kid, right? But you go back to Citizens on Patrol, which I think is 3, and dude, you have some. I think that's right, but whichever one was Citizens on Patrol has some of the stupidest, funniest moments. But 7 just doesn't. I remember it, but it's just not one that's memorable, so to speak.
yeah, I mean and a lot like I said, a lot of people didn't get to see it because it basically just came out as a straight to video movie. So a lot of people didn't catch it. So that's kind of that's the way it works when you release that many movies in a franchise. Sometimes they, by the end of it, they're not really coming out in theaters.
Yeah,
So I remember
there's not.
seeing, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, so I remember seeing this. I caught it on video on VHS when it came out. So I never saw this one in theaters, but I threw it in there today because it's Police Academy, and I wanted people to hear how long this franchise has been going on. There
Yeah,
was a time
of
where they were
course.
basically like one a year.
Yeah. Oh
It was
yeah.
kind of off for a long time. It was like, oh, here comes the new Police Academy movie.
Yep. Yep. And then that takes us to a movie I don't remember at all, and it's a film called Camp Nowhere. So you're going to have to tee this up because I don't have any recollection. It sounds like it's a horror film. It's probably not, but
Not
um, I don't remember it at all.
so this kid is they're gonna send his parents are gonna send him off to camp, and then he realizes that like pretty much all his friends are gonna be sent off to camp, and it ends up it stars Christopher Lloyd, Jonathan Jackson, Emmett Walsh, and it's also got Andrew Keegan playing one of the kids. It's got Jessica Alba, early Jessica Alba in this movie as
Wow.
well. Um, and it's funny because Christopher Lloyd and Andrew Keegan are in the same movie, and in 2010, I do a movie with both of those guys, also both of them in the exact same movie, called Love, Wedding, Marriage. So I'd work with Christopher Lloyd and Andrew Keegan in the same movie, which is I thought was kind of funny because they were both in this movie together. But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of movie that I was talking to one of our. I'm getting ready to start a movie now that we start filming on August 6th, or by the time this airs, we will have been filming for a couple of weeks. But I was telling the producer, I said, we are, and this movie that I'm going to do is a comedy. And I said, man, this is such an underserved market. This is the type of movie, Camp Nowhere, that would never get released in theaters today. Not because
Right.
of anything other than the fact that they're just not releasing comedies in theaters. I mean,
Right.
Naked Gun is the only movie that's a comedy that's getting released in the summer this year. That's
That's
it.
insane. That's
Now
insane.
there might be comedy elements to some of the movies, but they're not. It's like a subgenre inside of like an action movie or something like that. They're not really comedies. They're more like oh, there's funny lines inside those movies. Yeah, great, but there's not. It's an action movie.
Right.
Uh, Gun would be considered the only comedy that's actually coming out in theaters, which is I just don't remember that ever happening before. So it's
No, it's
really an underserved market, and need to get back to it. And that's one of the things that some of these producers were talking about. They're like, well, we're trying to fit in where the market's underserved, and I say comedy is number one far and away the genre that is taking the most hits as far as theater's concerned. People are just afraid to do them. They were afraid to offend people of any kind whatsoever. So even if it's just offending five people, it
right.
doesn't matter. Like you're gonna offend somebody doing something, so you might as well just make a funny comedy where the majority of people laugh and don't worry about it. But that's
Yeah.
not what happens. And Camp Nowhere is kind of one of those things. They go to this camp and there's like a lot of hijinks and there's a little bit of adventure and stuff like that that goes on in it as well. And it's kind of a funny little a camp story. And I've been on this big summer movies that are based around summer. I've been on a big summer movie kick uh, in the last month or so. And so this is one of those types of films as well.
That's good. That takes us to August 31st. And this movie has probably not been seen by a lot of our audience. And the reason
Yeah,
I say that is I only remember it because this is, again, I've talked about this a lot, and I'm not here to be a broken record, but we are literally entering the era of indie film, and the importance of indie film comes from this time frame in the 90s. And this movie comes out called Killing Zoe.
right.
And I just remember people, maybe even Jonathan Green, but I just remember people nonstop talking about it because it was this indie sort of, this is pre-viral because it was all word of mouth, but the word of mouth on the film inside of our circle and sort of the alt community, alt rock community was very much like, oh, we got to see Killing Zoe, Killing Zoe, Killing Zoe. And it's yet another one of those movies that gets parlayed often back then, I remember, but was often parlayed with Reservoir Dogs and some of that kind of content.
Right.
Though it's different, it did get parlayed. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I imagine it probably didn't do that well at the box office because, again, it's an obscure movie. But what do you have on Killing Zoe?
Yeah, so as far as box office is concerned, it's a small movie to begin with. It's like a $1.5 million movie that made about 1.5 million, so it kind of broke even. And of course, like you said, it's built that great cult following that people like to throw around that word, that phrase cult following. Um, so it's kind of built that over the course of time. And of course, like you said, a lot of our uh, friends wanted to see this film or did see the film and talked about it a lot. And this is where a lot of people find Eric Stoltz for the first time. And he's been around for a long time at this point, but because he's back. I mean, I saw him the first time in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, so he's back in the early '80s. But a lot of people on the indie scene find Eric Stoltz for the first time here, and of course Julie Delpy's in it, who's kind of an indie darling as well, and Gary Kemp, and so that's kind of the big cast of it. And yeah, I mean it's a bank heist movie. Uh, Notoriously, it got linked to Reservoir Dogs because there's crew that are linked to it and producers that are linked to it, and they found the bank for this movie while scouting Reservoir Dogs. So
There we
that's
go.
like part of the infamous link to that movie. So every time you hear about Reservoir Dogs, people will slip Killing Zoe out the backside of that conversation a lot of times. So that's where that kind of comes from. But yeah, I mean, good movie. Eric Stoltz is quite good in it, and of course, he's infamous for being the first Back to the Future,
Right.
or before Michael J. Fox. Of course, he got
That's right.
fired. Yep. But the first Marty McFly. But yeah, I mean that's kind of Killing Zoe, and I'm sure that a lot of people didn't watch this movie back in 1994, like you said. As a matter of fact, a lot of our friends caught it later,
Yeah.
and I remember like Stephen Coppajans, he loved this movie, and of course he watched it. I think after, like a couple of years after. So
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones that becomes part of the. We joked about it growing up some. I remember it, and I definitely made the statements during film school too, which was for a long time, indie film meant good crime gone bad. Like
right,
every indie movie that came out, and this is one of those. This is part of laying the foundation of good crime gone bad. And all these indie films were that for a very long time. And there's other stuff like that. Like Fargo is another one of those, and good crime gone bad type concept. Reservoir Dogs, obviously. And as you go through, it just seemed like that was the trend for a long time in the indie genre. But this is one of the, I would call it one of the forefathers of helping make that movement happen. That's juxtaposed against a movie in which I believe it's Melanie Griffith. Is that correct?
it is Melanie Griffith. Congratulations.
No, I'll never forget because there's one of the hottest scenes she's ever done is in this movie.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where that movie will live in my brain forever. Like it got burned into my brain as a teenager, and it's still there because of how just sexy. That's the only word I know to describe it. She's very sexy in that movie, and she is extremely sexy in a couple of scenes in Milk Money. And so I'll never forget it as long as I live. Like I know that it recalls in my brain very quickly. Beyond that, beyond the sexy elements, I don't remember anything else about it. That's all I got.
This is probably one of those movies that doesn't get made today, because just the plot. I mean,
Right.
it's these three suburban like 11-year-old boys who really just want to see a woman naked, and they think that that's going to like complete their life if they can see this woman naked. So they try to get up enough money, and they go to a prostitute, and her name is V, and it's played by Melanie Griffith, and she agrees to uh, show get naked for these kids. And of course, she ends up in the suburbs, and of course, there's a romantic comedy element to this. And the dad's played by Ed Harris,
Yep.
and of course, there's like I said, and then the rest is the rest. I mean, basically, is a romantic comedy. So it's a good movie, and it did fairly well for its time frame, being released at the very end of August, Labor Day weekend. It still made like $20 million, which is pretty good for that time frame. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a world in which this script crosses a producer's desk today, and they're like, "That's a great idea. Let's make that film." I mean,
Right.
it's kind of a shame because I saw this movie in theaters, and I saw it at Carmike 10, and loved it. I thought it was really funny, and Melanie Griffith looks great in it, of course, and I liked Ed Harris, and I thought everybody was great in it. But yeah, it's just like this is probably up there with Color of Night, is those controversial movies that you were talking about on the show. I don't think this one gets made today, unfortunately. And this is what's kind of happening with the comedies these days. Like they find one element that doesn't fit everybody's cup of tea, and they're like, well, we can't make it because 25 people on Twitter will be upset. Yeah, so that's a shame because these types of movies are not coming out, and so you're losing a lot of romantic comedies and comedies just in general that are just not making it in the theaters because of that. And something that definitely need. And of course, it's got a really good co-starring cast as well: Anne Heche, Philip Bosco. So yeah, it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. I think it's a fun film.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it ends up being very sweet, but like I said, there's like
Yeah,
Melanie Griffith is smoking. She is, and again, as a young dude, I just remember going like, oh my god, she is really sexy, and it was just one of those things. Like, I mean, I'm not going to deny that I was a teenager at some point. That's stupid. That's what Twitter says I'm supposed to do. Anyway, throughout this series of summer, 1994 has produced some of, I would say, the most iconic albums of all time. We've had a lot of bangers. And again, I don't even think I have to mention that it is a fan request because at this point we all just want to hear this because it's a highlight for a lot of people in the show. So let's talk about the albums that came out in the back half here,
yeah.
right? What do we got in the mix? Because I'm sure there's something sitting in there that's just going to be one of those like, oh, I forgot that came out.
Right. There's a few of them. So we had finished talking about Jeff Buckley, of course, who's amazing in every way,
Yep.
shape, and then After the Storm comes out by Crosby, Stills and Nash on the
Wow.
16th of August. So, and then you got Come by Prince, not one of his bigger
Oh,
albums, but Prince is always Prince, right? I mean, he's always great. Uh, and then of course you get the Jerky Boys 2 by the Jerky, and the Jerky Boys were always great, right? I mean, they're quintessential '90s.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of people who don't know them because they were quintessential '90s, and they had their own movie out and everything else. And I mean, yeah, it's a fad, no doubt about it. But something that wouldn't work today because every phone has caller ID and everything else. But back in the day, the Jerky Boys were pretty funny. I'd recommend people checking out some of those albums and sketches and skits and stuff like that they used to do. Maybe You Should Drive by the Bare Naked Ladies comes out.
Now, what's on that album? Which singles
It's
on that album?
not that. It's not that album. It's not that
It's
album.
the one right before it, though, right? It's the one right before that one.
Yeah, it's not. It's not
The,
the album you're wanting. It's not the album you're wanting it to be.
no, I get it. But what's interesting is I think a lot of people only knew the Bare Naked Ladies from that one album, but they've been an established band for a little bit of time, and they put out some bangers. If you go back in their back catalog, there's stuff there that's like really good. They're a very different sounding band and had a very different approach to music, and it just so happens that 1 week or whatever it is comes out and blows them the heck up. But like prior to that, they were still a very established band. So it's interesting just to note that '94 they're dropping records.
Absolutely. Um, then Picture Perfect Morning by Edie Brickell. Of course, she was really big in the '80s,
Yep.
but
Yep.
still music and infamously, she's married to Paul Simon as well. So, "Sleeps with Angels" by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. He's still putting out records in the '90s. And here's one that we definitely listen to: "Songs in the Key of Bree" by Buck O'Nine.
Oh yeah, we definitely this is getting us into getting us closer to that ska phase.
Yeah,
The old ska phase.
the ska phase. Well, it's like the ska core phase, because of course ska's been around for a long time, but
Yeah, that's what I'm
that
sorry. You're
kind of
right. You're right.
kind of makes its kind of rears its head again in a different with kind of mixed genre, and that's what makes it kind of more. We're going to listen to it as much more because we're always in a lot of heavier stuff. Uh, "Dummy" by Portishead comes out. This is their debut album.
Okay, so this is a record I would say is one of those ones I forgot it came out in '94. I I still have it in a long form rotation of mine just because of how different it is.
Right.
This is a very complex album with a DJ involved and samples, and then I forget the lady's name, but her haunting voice, and Jared Jones, a friend of ours, later on in life, this is like his band for the longest time. It's like Portishead and Blur for the longest time, and he still to this day is a big Portishead guy. But again, if you've never heard the album Dummy, it's really good and it's a really interesting debut.
Yeah, Portishead's great. I mean, it was at the time I really enjoyed it. I haven't listened to him nearly as much these days, but yeah, definitely big in the '90s for sure. "Everyone's Got One" by Echo Belly that comes out,
Oh yeah,
and Cyndi Lauper releases a compilation with some new tracks, 12 Deadly Sins, and then some. So, I mean, I was always a Cyndi Lauper fan, without question. I mean, I think I don't know if I've told this on here or not. I don't know if I have, but Cyndi Lauper. My story with Cyndi Lauper is that her brother and her cousin worked for my dad in New York. So
crazy.
when we lived in New Jersey, her brother and her dad and her cousin, her brother and her cousin worked for my dad, and so we would have these parties in our backyard in New Jersey, and they would come over, and so it would her brother and her cousin would come over. And they were really nice guys. His brother's name's Fred, and her cousin's name was Vinny, and just quintessential like Italian guys, really nice dudes. Would come over, and Fred would bring like autographs, give me like autograph stuff from Cyndi Lauper, and that I still have to this day, like autograph photos and things like that. He
Oh,
was
that's
really
great.
about doing that kind of stuff, and yeah, so I had this like tie in to Cyndi Lauper. Um, didn't really meet her or anything, but did get autographed gear and stuff like that from her. That was kind of fun. She would always sign it to me and things like that. But
Which is also relevant based on last week's episode. She was heavily tied into wrestling for a period of time too, which makes it
without
yeah.
question, yeah, and I didn't mention it then, but I'm mentioning it now. Yeah, Cyndi Lauper. I've always had this big love for Cyndi Lauper, and if not because she obviously makes some great music, and of course she was tied into wrestling as well. But then this whole thing with you know her family members working for my dad in New York, because
That's crazy.
he lived in New Jersey, but a lot of times he had to travel into the city to work most of the time. He had a couple different offices, but one of them was he at some point he does work in the city, and these guys work for him. Um, "Bake Sale" by Sebado.
Oh, there you go. Now here we go. College radio music starts really pushing out into the mainstream.
"Covered Girl" by Sean Colvin.
Oh yeah, that one lives for a while.
That does, no doubt. Muse "Sick and Hour Message" by Public Enemy.
Oh,
I
there you
was
go.
always a big Public Enemy guy. I like Public Enemy. Of course, "Natural Born Killers" comes out. That soundtrack comes out in this time frame on the 23rd. Here is an album that's going to kind of change the way I look at music a bit, because this album is going to come out. I'm going to see these girls on Saturday Night Live perform a couple songs, and I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
immediately become a huge fan. And you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
There's album Natural Ingredients, which is going to be their very first actual studio album, but their second album, because In Search of Manny was an EP. But Luscious Jackson is going to release Natural Ingredients. They're going to end up on Saturday Night Live. I'm going to see them on Saturday Night Live in one of our sleepovers at the beach house.
Yep.
And then I'm going to become a massive Luscious Jackson fan for the rest of my life.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't there a tie from Luscious Jackson to the Beastie Boys? Wasn't there some like the same record label or something?
They were on the Grand Royal record label, and of course,
there you go.
Kate Schellenbach, who is the drummer for Luscious Jackson, was one of the original Beastie Boys. She was in the band.
There we go.
They had dual percussionists at one point, and she was one of them. So, yeah, so she was an original Beastie Boy at that point. Luscious Jackson, of course, going to be big fans of, and of course, Beastie Boys big fans of Luscious Jackson. Put them on the Grand Royal label, and the rest is history. I mean, Grand Royal not around anymore, but there were a lot of great bands on that label.
Here's what's crazy about Luscious Jackson. They came up I think they played one of their songs on the 90s Sirius XM. And I was telling the girls about them because I have two daughters. And whenever, we share between modern pop garbage and then dad rock, as they call it. And when Luscious Jackson came up, I was like, hey, this is an all-girl band. Like, these are all women that are performing. It's really awesome. And I got to be honest with you, the craziest thing, not crazy, but the most amazing thing about Luscious Jackson is their music held up. Like, it doesn't feel 90s. It feels kind of timeless, which is really rare, which is probably why, they end up lasting for a bit of time. But they have such a unique sound that it just kind of like the Portishead record did too, is like it there's elements of production in the music that are, more modern standards have changed those. But what I'm saying is if you played this now to someone who's never heard them, I guarantee you they would consider them to be a new band. And they wouldn't know the difference because it doesn't have a dated tone to it. And that to me, bands that have that kind of ability are really the ones that stand out. And I love the fact that, like, again, I like them. I know they're your favorite band. They're like, if you guys only knew. Yeah, they're one of them. Yeah. But they're a big band for Tony. So
absolutely.
That's cool that it drops. Yeah.
And, also the great thing about them is they're very artistic with their music, right? Using a lot of different samples. There's a lot of artistry in each song that comes out, and they all do different things in the bands. Of course, they have Kate on the drums, they had Vivian doing keyboards and samples and things like that, but they had Jill, who was more of the melodic singer and the lead singer, but more melodic, and then they had Gabby, who played bass and rapped a lot, and did all that. So that's why they had all these different elements to their music, which is one of the reasons I really liked them. And of course, it's four ladies making music, which doesn't hurt either. But yeah, I really do enjoy this band and got to see them live a couple times. Stephen Brown and I went to go see them at the House of Blues in New Orleans. That was kind of fun. Yeah. Then I got to see them with your favorite band live here in St. Louis when they opened for them. And Jimmy's Chicken Shack opened for Luscious Jackson, who opened for live. With a great mix of bands there.
2 out of 3. I could have left at halftime.
You could have left right before live. But
I would have been good.
They put on a good show, though. I know you don't like them, but they have a really good stage presence. So it was a good show overall. Here's an album that I know you liked, and I still like it to this day. Rubberneck by the Toadies. It's their debut.
So yeah, this album's great. That album and that song is another thing that if you hear that song and you grew up in that time frame, you're immediately back to wherever you were. Like, it is one of those pieces of quintessential music that lives on forever. It was very popular. It's still extremely popular. I think it's hilarious to me that song is what are we going on, 30 years old, and it still has as much weight on radio play. I guarantee it. It has a pretty regular radio play across a lot of different stations, not just classic stuff. Like that record is, and is it called Possum Kingdom? I think is the name of the song.
Possum is the song.
That song, yeah, that song still stands out. But that album is fantastic for sure.
Oh, the whole album's great. I mean, Possum Kingdom. I'd recommend the songs "Away" and "Tyler." Also, they're amazing. And of course, "I Come from the Water" was a song that did really well for them off this album as well. They had 4 or 5 good singles off this album.
Yep.
Debut. That's pretty rare sometimes. So they I mean, still around today. I mean, they played Point Fest this year here in St. Louis, and still sound great. Still a great band. Of course, we saw them we didn't actually see them that night, did we? Because they played with Helmet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We went to go see Helmet, who opened for them, and then we hung out on stage in the Helmet guys in the RV, and we didn't watch Toadie's set at all. But yeah, they're amazing, and have toured with a lot of different great bands. So here's another one, Stoned and Dethroned by the Jesus and Mary Chain. We knew a lot of people who liked them. When I Woke by Rusted Root, good band.
That stuff got really popular very quickly.
Yep. Here is an album that you definitely 100% liked, as did I. Without a Sound, Dinosaur Jr. Yep,
still to this day, Jeff Worley. He and I talk about that a good bit. That's one of the bands that all three of us liked. Jay Massis was, still is. I mean, he's just this very indie guitar player, and he was a very good guitar player, and he has this very strange voice. But I just listened to this entire album front to back about a month ago. It's so good and so raw that it's still something that I listen to on the regular. It's like Weezer's Blue album for me. It's just one of those ones that will never leave my brain.
Yeah,
it's a great record.
Here's an album that was just massive. It was just massive. I mean, it went over 7 times platinum, I believe. Maybe up to 8 now. Definitely, maybe Oasis.
Yep.
That's a huge, huge, huge record. Now, I was never a big Oasis fan back in the day, but this is a huge album.
Yes, yeah, it's major. And this is still right before the Blur. Are we getting into the Oasis versus Blur? That's a little bit later, I think, maybe.
Still a little bit away from that.
Okay.
For those two bands kind of have their big feud, but yeah, I mean, this Oasis was big, man, and I didn't really like them because the guys were just such pompous, arrogant douchebags.
They're the worst.
They're the
worst. They got back.
Just couldn't handle them. I mean, when they came out and said they were better than the Beatles, you remember that whole thing?
Oh yeah,
They came out and said they were better than the Beatles. When they did that, I was just like, man, I have no respect for these guys. I don't want to hear them. I'm not buying their records. And I admit they got some good songs. Don't get me wrong, but in their talented guys, I just and I think they've gotten probably a little bit better because they've gotten a little bit older, of course, but still.
But they still had, if I'm not mistaken, they still had a moment in which they were, it might have been pandemic or somewhere around there. It's Liam and Noel Gallagher is their names. And they got back together, and it was only for like a week because they broke up because these guys fight all the time because their egos are so big. And then they broke up immediately. Like they got back together, announced it, and they couldn't get along and broke back up.
Yeah. They do that all the time. They don't, I mean, I guess they kind of like each other because they're brothers, but they don't really because their egos can't handle it. Yeah, I mean, then you got Down by the Jesus Lizard.
Yeah, there you go. Which would become David Yao. It would become important to me later. I did not care for him when I was a younger guy, but then I went back and listened to him, and they were very ahead of their time.
So here's a big record. Here's a really, really, really big record. As a matter of fact, 2 by Boyz II Men.
Oh yeah.
I'll Make Love to You, On Bended Knee, Thank You, Water Runs Dry. Of course, the infamous me singing "Chicken Leg," "I'll Make Love to You" several years later.
I wasn't gonna bring. I was
You weren't
not
gonna
gonna
bring it
bring
up,
it up.
but you got to bring it up. I mean, it's just the way it is. I'm just gonna say this right now. I could not get into Andy Davis's car without hearing this album.
Yeah, yeah,
He loved Boys to Men so much, and I talked to him, and I mentioned him briefly like a couple episodes ago uh, with Hootie and the Blowfish as well. If it was a black musician, Andy Davis believed in them without
right.
question, and he loved Boys to Men. I like Boys to Men as well. Don't get me wrong. I was a fan of these guys as well. Still am, but he really loved them. I mean, he was
Yeah,
just. I would get into his car and he would play these songs, and he knew every single word to every song on the album, and he would sing them in all their glory all the time. He's a good friend of mine, but man, he loved Boys to Men.
yeah. This album was such a mega hit that like you couldn't get away from it if you tried. Like, I mean, seriously. And I tried, and it was like everywhere. It's not. My thing is, I like R&B, but I don't like modern R&B. I like R&B when we're getting back into sort of classic R&B. But this, I guess, this would be considered classic now. But in the time frame of this, like I could not get past that slow jam R&B stuff. Like it just, for whatever reason, didn't. I appreciate the ever loving heck out of the ability that these guys have,
Right.
and they've got some amazing songs that blew up and they're burned in my brain forever. Because, like I said, you couldn't get away from it. But not my all time favorite jams. But I respect the crap out of them for it, for sure.
They when you listen to their first album, it's a little more upbeat
Yep.
and it's a little more poppy and upbeat and things like that. And I would really love that debut album. This is a little bit more romantic. They've brought the mood down a lot. You know, they definitely wanted to release a completely different type of album here, and
Yeah.
so all the songs are like romantic jams. You know, like you'd hear these songs if they released a massive like 100 song compilation of the best romantic songs of all time. There'd be like 4 songs from this album on it. You know,
Yep.
like
Yep.
it was right.
Yep.
Um, and the last big album that came from this time frame in late August was the debut album for Usher, which did quite well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Usher
Yeah.
pretty big at this point. He's about to
Yeah.
get
He.
yeah.
Yeah. I was about to say he's gonna only get bigger from there. But like it. So Usher from the '90s, Boys to Men from the '90s, and Usher from the '90s are staples of my wife's like musical taste. Like she loves some Usher Boy, and so we've listened to a lot of this with the kids. Not all of it because some of it we can't, but we've listened to a lot of cleaned versions. And Usher, I've grown to appreciate a lot more over time. And he has a few songs that are later on in his catalog that like I still jam to. They're like Friday night jams for me. Like getting off work, and it's in there with my Montel Jordan. I won't lie, I have a little playlist. Montel Jordan's in there, but then so is a couple of Usher songs. So again, my only complaint is this time of music. There's an awful lot of slow jams, and I just couldn't handle the slow jams. Dude, slow jams were not for
He was
me.
a little upbeat though. Usher was at this
Yeah,
time upbeat. Like he's kind of what Boys to Men is in their first album. You know, because
right.
that was executive produced by your boy uh, Sean P Diddy Puffy Combs. So this is he's got a little bit more of that going on in this album. But yeah, I mean Usher is pretty big. We always liked Usher though, because I mean he's in the movie. He'll be in the movie The Faculty eventually,
Yep.
and we always had a respect for Usher. I like Usher.
Yeah, I have no problem with him. I mean, I hate that any of the stuff that's come out that he had to deal with P Diddy. I hate it for him because he could have made it on his own. He didn't need that dude. But
No, definitely didn't. But you know, P Diddy was a huge producer at the time. So I mean, he was had a lot of big albums coming out. So this is kind of his time frame to be really blowing up. and because of course Notorious B.I.G. is still alive at this point and stuff like that too. So that all those guys were really big in 1994, and Usher, huge album, huge debut for him, and that kind of rounds us out for August of 1994.
One last thing on that, we're just as a disclaimer reminder that this is 94. We're going to have some P Diddy that's going to come back up because you can't get away from him at this point. You're going to end up with Harvey Weinstein a good bit coming up. He's going to be involved in this. I mean, the cringe list is going to build, but just remember it's 1994. But the cringe those individuals doing terrible shit, that happens. Or it doesn't totally happen, but alleged. I don't know what's been confirmed, so I'm just trying to be quote polite to a-holes.
We don't. Nobody knows anything about it for a couple decades.
Right.
So it's, they were still great at their time. I mean, it's kind of what it is. I mean, obviously Harvey Weinstein was always a jerk. We knew that. But as soon as I get in the industry, I know that he's a jerk. We know that once I get into the film industry and I start making movies with a lot of different people, his reputation is like really not good. And I think everybody knew that he had done what he had done previous to him getting busted, but it was just a matter of nobody ever being able to prove it.
Right. Yeah. So what a insane. So we're still in 94. We'll be in 94 next week. Now, are we having a next episode? Do we have a special guest next episode? Is that accurate?
We will, because next episode we'll get into Pulp Fiction at some point.
There we go.
And our boy Richard Rowan. Richard Rowan's going to come out on the next episode and tell us a great story about him and his dad seeing Pulp Fiction at the Dollar Theater. And, of course, we're going to talk about his dad a little bit because I have some stories too.
That's great. Yeah, so next episode, obviously, always like every episode, super fun. Can't wait for the next one. If you haven't taken the time to give us a review, we always love them. You can do those on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. It always helps. But also, if you want to join the conversation, you want to see pictures and see all the good stuff that we post along the way, I still owe Tony a picture of my Carmike card that I found. If you go over to the Facebook page, that's where the majority of it is active. We're also available on Twitter, but Facebook's the primary one where we see more of that content. Depends on what you're into. If you're into X, then go for it. But you can hit those up. And as always, I always like to say Tony has the last word, and he tends to just give really good ones. So, Tony, last word.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I've been watching a lot of summer movies lately over the last few weeks or so. Caught one called Summer Days, Summer Nights, which is on Prime. Is it the best movie I've ever seen? No, but there's something about this movie that when I watched it, as it was ending, I was like, man, I should turn that back on again and watch that again. It's just something about the setting of this film that I just don't really want to leave. The movie can be a little bit corny in spots, but Edward Burns does such a great job of putting us into such an amazing setting and there's a couple of characters I really like that I'm just kind of like, I really just want to watch that again. So it's going to be one of those movies that I'm going to flip on from time to time. But I'd highly recommend it. I recommended it to somebody else, and they said the same thing. Not the best movie they've ever seen by a long shot. But, yeah, they kind of understood what I was talking about. So check it out and enjoy some of those summer movies because they're all over the place. And we need to get back into more of those types of films and make those types of comedies and have a lot more fun. And that'll make us all laugh a lot more.
There we go.